Okay, in this video we're going to have a look at some recent immigration trends over the last 10 years and also have a look at the impact that an ageing population is having on our economy and how the government's using immigration as a way to solve that. So in terms of some key trends, in terms of our ageing population, Australia's population is expected to be nearly 36 million by 2050, and over the next 40 years the number of people of retirement age, so when you're defining an ageing population you're talking about more and more people entering retirement age and leaving the workforce, is expected to double from 13 to 25% of the population. So those of working will be 57 to 60%. We're going to have a lot more old people. In terms of immigration in Australia grew up until around 2008, and that was mainly because we were experiencing capacity constraints and skill shortages. So before the GFC, immigration figures actually grew above 300,000 because we needed so many foreign workers, because we were experiencing so many capacity constraints. Immigration grows quicker when we're close to our productive capacity because we need more workers to fill skill shortages. Currently, immigration targets are around 190,000, and more of this immigration is becoming skilled migration. So 68% of our immigration is now skilled compared to 50% 10 years ago. And that's showing where we're sort of targeting migration going forward. Generally, migration rates will fall when Australia's economy is growing slowly because there'll be higher unemployment and we're more worried about immigrants taking Australian jobs, essentially. Skilled immigrants are now mainly 2/3 of all immigration, and they're mainly from India, China and the UK, and they generally come to skill-specific job vacancies, and some of our main areas of job vacancies include cooks, accountants, software engineers, software analysts and hairdressers. So when you are talking about how immigration is being used in Australia, just more generally, it's important that you mention that more and more of Australia's targets are based on skilled migration, and quote some of the key areas that are experiencing skill shortages and are experiencing higher migration. And in terms of immigration to Australia, all immigrants must apply for a visa and meet certain conditions with strict rules to protect local jobs and people. Those who seek asylum are not part of our skilled migration and will generally come here under our humanitarian migration system. In terms of Australia's population, about approximately 60% of our increase in our population is due to net migration, and the other 40% is due to natural increases. So, in terms of the impact of an ageing population on economic growth and living standards, we have talked about this a little bit in the past, but some of the negatives is that our labour participation rate will fall, and that can lead to increasing labour costs because there's less competition for jobs, as well as decreased labour productivity because there's a smaller pool of labour to choose from, and it's potentially easier to get a job. That will all lead to decreased economic growth. So in terms of our growth rates, we are expected to grow in the long term, but our growth rate's expected to grow from 3.3 to down to 2.7% on average over the next 40 years. And you've got to remember that our population is growing every year, so that is just enough to kind of increase our real GDP per capita. So what's likely to happen with our ageing population? It could cause capacity constraints and skill shortages as we have a lack of supply to meet demand. Government finances are going to be under more pressure because we have more people to support with an ageing population. So that could lead to increased taxes because we have a higher dependency ratio. So it used to be one retired person for every 5 workers. Now there's going to be 1 retired person for every 2.7 workers. A much higher dependency ratio, and that can lead to much higher taxes. Expenditure is expected to exceed revenue by 2.75% of GDP by 2050. So it's likely to continue to see increased net debt, higher wage pressures, skill shortages, and a reduction in productivity. So some of the problems with tight labour markets, as I said, it can reduce our production levels, it can limit aggregate supply, it can add to wage pressures in the economy, which again reduce firms' willingness and ability to produce. So again, whenever you're doing questions on immigration, you really want to be targeting these words, willingness and ability to produce. So immigration helps to keep wages low, which lowers real unit labour costs, which makes firms more willing and able to produce. And these things can also lead to increased inflationary pressures. So the government is using increased skilled migration in order to try and solve some of these problems. In terms of how we can tackle an ageing population, we can use the supply side of the budget. We can use budgetary policies like childcare subsidies or baby bonuses or rebates for hiring people over 50, so giving subsidies for businesses to hire older workers so they stay in the workforce, lifting the pension age, or we can implement immigration policies. As I said, these are just in different ways, just like in the last slide, that we can target increased aggregate supply to boost participation and lower wages going forward. So in terms of the purpose of immigration policy, the purpose is add to our pool of labour. So we can get more people in the labour force, businesses therefore can expand their production. It will also give businesses access to increased knowledge because they'll be, we'll get the benefits of the skills of those coming into our labour force. That will provide benefits in terms of economies of scale. Because we have more people in our country, there'll be larger levels of demand, so businesses will be producing on greater scale, and that will help to lower their cost of production as well, because they'll spread their fixed costs over a greater level of output. So the idea of today's migration is to help address the challenges of an ageing population by increasing workforce participation, adding to productivity and boosting economic growth. Immigrants, as I said, often have higher skills than the average Australian, so that also boosts productivity. They're also very flexible and often experienced in a range of different economic climates as well. So they're very critical for reducing skill shortages, reducing capacity constraints, reducing the pressure on wages, reducing production costs, and making firms more willing and able to supply in the long term. Just a quick fact, between 2000 and 2010, labour force participation rates increased from 63 to 65%, nearly 66%, and 94% of that was because of skilled migration. At the moment, the participation rate's around 64.8%, and most of the reason it's above 63% still is because of the high levels of immigration of skilled workers in their 20s and 30s. Thank you.